Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Don't Open That Door.
Don't do it.
As always, I'm your host, Justin, and I'm joined by the ever-cautious Nico. Nico, how you doing?
I am really grateful for the creature comforts in life, like plumbing, food being readily available, not living in the woods. How are you?
I'm doing. That's the first time I think in all these episodes anyone asked me how I was doing.
It's because no one gives a fuck about you. I'm kidding. I love you.
Well, with that revelation, we're going to turn over to Dan. Dan, how you doing?
I'm feeling pretty hungry today.
Hungry? Well, guess what? We got a great movie to feast on. Today, we're going to be talking about Gretel and Hansel, not to be confused with Hansel and Gretel. Released just recently, January 31st, 2020. Directed by Oz Perkins, written by Rob Hayes. We've got a pretty small cast of characters. We have Gretel, played by Sophia Lillis of It Part 1 fame.
And 2. We have Hansel, played by Sam Leakey on his debut. Spoilers ahead, for those of you who haven't seen the movie. It is still in theaters at time of recording. We have the old witch, played by Alice Krieg, and the young version of the witch, played by Jessica DeGao. So as you guys probably already know, there is a fairy tale called Hansel and Gretel. This is loosely based on it. It does respect some of the lore. So we start off in a plague-ravaged land. I'm going to go ahead and assume it's Germany, like the fairy tale. So we've got soon-to-be orphans, Gretel and her brother Hansel. Now, I will say in this, they kind of make Gretel a little bit older. She's supposed to be about 16. Hansel's a little bit younger, probably around 8 or so. Their mom kind of loses her mind, and they go on to seek a better place. After getting rescued by a ranger, he says, hey, you guys should go see some woodsmen. I feel like they'd have jobs for you and food. So they go find these woodsmen, and naturally the woodsmen are in the woods. So they trek through the woods kind of aimlessly. And that's when Gretel starts talking to some mushrooms. What are those mushrooms called, Nico? Hit me with the scientific name. They are called fly agaric, and they they have the exact qualities that you think they do.
That's right. They fly high. And by that, I mean they just get high as hell. And they do that for a little bit until they chance upon a house in the woods filled with great food, great smells. And so they naturally break in and start trying to eat the food themselves. And they discover that there's an old woman living there. Oh no, as it does turn out that old woman is in fact a goddamn witch. Plot twist, so is Gretel. So the old witch starts to teach her about some witchcraft and whatnot. She learns to manipulate a magic staff, and she learns a sleeping draught to put people to sleep. And along the way, she also discovers that bounty of food they were eating was actually body parts. That was kind of cool. Hansel then ends up disappearing, and Gretel's like, oh, where's my brother? At that point in time, the witch says, hey, if you want to be a real boss, if you want to get real strong, you're going to have to eat your brother. And she makes a metaphor where he is her poison. She then kind of teleports Gretel over to the the kitchen where they're about to cook up her little bro. And she uses the magic she just learned maybe a day ago to command a magic staff to basically impale the witch over the fire, thereby cooking her and burning her to death. She sends her brother away to go on his own, thereby kind of, in a way, getting rid of him. And at the end, we can see that she kind of gains the powers of the witch. So I guess to kind of start with, let's not go too deep into it right now. But Dan, generally speaking, did you like the film?
I liked it. I didn't love it, but it was really interesting. It was different and unique, I thought. Sometimes it had some Alice in Wonderland kind of vibes to it, with sort of the weirdness kind of going on. And I mean, of course, the mushroom scene, but even other than that, just sort of the weird things that happened. And a lot of times I felt like I didn't know what was going to happen next. And I thought that was kind of cool. Overall, I liked it.
Okay. Nico, just if you keep it short, because I know you, I think I have a sneak peek at your answer here, but how'd you feel about it?
I liked it less than you think I did. Surprisingly enough. I did enjoy it quite a bit, but I didn't love it. Yeah, I liked it.
Okay. Well, speaking of liking or not liking, how'd you like the visuals?
So I really did think that the visuals and the sound were two of the strengths of this movie. One of the things that I noted while I was in the theater, and I was like the only person there, which is kind of sad, but
I really enjoyed how the camera work, it gave it sort of like a documentary feel and in the first half, and then in parts of the second half it was very much centered around kind of like a predator prey angle where it was like real low to the ground and just kind of creepy looking. But I don't know. I think it was just it felt really honest in a strange way, like as if we were really just walking through the woods and being like, yeah, it's a little bit of shaky cam. It wasn't set up to look very professional, isn't the right word, but it feels different. I liked it.
I will say, as you brought up that shaky cam comment, I personally hated the wobbly shaky cam moments. That for me just kind of directly took me out. It was something I would expect to see in like a music video, not something I would really look for in a kind of a horror movie. And I also kind of disliked the shots where they would zoom up really close on the characters. Like there was a couple different scenes where they would
I loved those.
Where they would zoom up. Well, it's different strokes for different folks. Yeah, I hated the shit out of it. But naturally we're gonna have Dan come in and tell us the right answer.
I didn't like the shaky cam parts. I liked the idea. I just wanted a little less shaky. I like what you said, Nico. Like, I didn't really catch the whole documentary kind of feel. But now that you mentioned that very, very much, I totally agree with that. The music I thought was really cool. It was sort of like
music fucking bumped.
It had some synth to it, right?
It's 80s as hell.
Yes, but it was cool because it wasn't 80s like Stranger Things style 80s.
You said the name of that.
Say it 2 more times and our podcast will go off the air.
Stranger Things, Stranger Things, Stranger Things.
No!
But it was similar in the sort of 80s throwback vibe, but it wasn't the like, oh my God, this is so 80s. Because, Stranger Things, of course, is all about nostalgia. It didn't feel nostalgic to me so much as just this is kind of what 80s music sounded like, if that makes sense. Which I really liked. And the visuals I thought were cool. I liked the color grading in the film and just
same
different colors and everything, and the sort of vibrance, I guess, on some parts. Yeah.
So for the dear audience listening, we have spent an extended amount of time, roughly 5 minutes, brushing up on the original fairy tale. But how does this movie compare to the original fairy tale that we all heard, or most of us heard, If We Were Loved? How do you think this stacks up?
Sorry to those of you without parents out there.
Wow.
Wow.
No, but the most obvious thing, I think, and the first thing that anybody will notice is when they go to see this movie or even look at it, it's like, hey, it's not called Gretel and Hansel, it's supposed to be Hansel and Gretel. Which, like, yeah, and I feel like that's probably the biggest point because it follows Gretel instead of Hansel. What did you guys think of that switch?
I mean, I would probably say that the switch was definitely intentional, not just a thing to kind of erase the memories of the Renner, Hansel and Gretel, which, to be fair, I quite loved. 2013, great movie. I think that I don't think the original necessarily focused in on Hansel as the main character. I think it kind of featured them both.
Yeah, that's fair.
This one specifically wanted to make Gretel the main character. So in doing so, they switched it.
Yes, and I think it was a good idea to switch the title because, one, it kind of makes you think. It stands out a little bit more than just Hansel and Gretel. And
it's intriguing.
Oh, another thing. Yeah, you're kind of like, oh, Gretel and Hansel. Like, what's that about? So I thought that was a good idea. And of course, like you said, it focuses mostly, very predominantly on Gretel. And Hansel's sort of a little punk in this one.
Yeah, I will say, thanks to my hard spent money and my minor in psychology, they did what's known as subconscious priming. By putting
I thought you were going to say the switcheroo. I swear to God, I thought you were going to say the switcheroo.
No, they did that later. So, yeah, they did subconsciously prime you. Hey, why'd they put Gretel first? To your point, Dan, to kind of make you get into it a little bit.
I have a theory about that, actually. Sophia Lillis from It's Part 1 and 2, I would say she is an upcoming star. She is a teenage actor, and I think she's really talented. Do you think that writer Rob Hayes and director Oz Perkis made this in mind, or made this with Sophia Lillis in mind?
I don't know if they necessarily made it with her specifically in mind, but I think they did want to cast somebody who was roundabouts that age. I believe Sophia Lillis is 18 and her character is supposed to be 16. So that's really close. They probably
Yeah.
wanted somebody who would kind of reflect that. And I will say, actually, I meant to bring this up in the sound category, but accents, this movie, one definite negative for me as far as this movie goes is the accents for me were a little bit all over the place. And one thing that I actually thought interesting was Sam Leakey, who played Hansel. I think he stuck to his accent a little bit better than she did. Her accent was all over the place. In some places, she didn't even have it. Like
That
it was
is fair.
all
yeah.
over the place.
To be fair, though, I fucking hated Hansel's voice.
But it was authentic.
Unfortunately.
So in the fairy tale, the witch is killed when Gretel tricks the witch into stepping into the oven first. Now, do we think the movie kind of accurately reflected that? Do we think Gretel tricks the witch in this one?
For a little bit. I mean, when she actually kills the witch, no. I think that's, well,
It's kind of fucking yeets the staff.
yeah, pretty much. I wouldn't quite call it trickery so much as eatery.
Yeah, there you go.
But
She did it so she couldn't eat her. But I was like,
Her house is the eatery and the yeetery. Yeah.
Hey.
you should open your own restaurant.
Hey, there you go.
The
eat
eatery.
and yeet. You eat and then you get eaten. But
But for a while, she does kind of lay low and try to trick the witch a little bit, and thinking that because she catches on to what's going on, but and by she I mean Gretel catches on to what the witch is doing a little bit, but doesn't let the witch see that. So I think for a while she kind of plays that, but once it actually comes down to it near the end, I don't think there's any like real trickery involved.
I would say that, she definitely tries to implement a little bit of trickery when there's a scene where the witch makes her a sleeping draft earlier on to help her go to sleep. And she does tell her that, hey, if you got these proportions differently, this would make a draught to mess you up, potentially even having like lethal consequences. However, when the witch is out, I guess, doing, taking care of business, Gretel does prepare a sleeping draught instead of tea in an attempt to put the witch to sleep. I thought that was a pretty nice little bit of trickery there.
Yeah, and she also, now that you brought that up, I just remembered, she also has the witch give her a sleeping draught and then throws it up later so that the witch thinks that she's asleep, but she's not.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
threw
like-
up in the little basin thing.
Yeah, it took me a minute to kind of realize that because she takes it and then she's like throwing up. And I'm like, what the fuck is she throwing up for? Like, I felt like that wasn't too well communicated, but I assume anyways, that's what that part was for.
Yes, I believe you're right. It's because there's a scene in the movie where Gretel starts to have these weird dreams. She kind of believes there's spirits in the house they're staying in, kind of, 3 spooky, 5 me, except not really. And the witch kind of wants her to go to sleep so that she kind of stops seeing those things. And Gretel, she throws up the sleeping draught, like you said, Dan, so that she doesn't go to sleep and she can continue exploring the house. Now, speaking of 3 spooky, 5 me, this is a question we often ask ourselves here on the pod, and I'm going to go ahead and refer this to Nico. Is this a horror movie?
It pains me to say this and agree with you for once, but no. I think it's more of an atmosphere piece than anything. Like if I had to put it into genre, I would say dark fantasy with horror vibes, but in particular with the way it's shot, the sound, and sort of like the emphasis on things being very surreal, both with the mushrooms and like the spooky shit. I really think it's just something that is meant to be watched for like the vibe of it as the atmosphere, because like Dan was saying, some of the shots are like really well done with the colors. Like there are multiple times when the characters are vibrantly orange or vibrantly blue, and there are these stained glass windows that are really colorful and just looks really cool. I wouldn't consider it a horror movie, though, insofar as I can't think of another horror movie where you spend almost the entire film with the protagonist interacting with the antagonist. That just doesn't strike me as a horror thing.
Dan, similar thoughts?
I think so. I pretty much agree with Nico. I'm really torn because I think I'm right on the fence where I could see it being barely a horror movie, and either like a just made it to horror, or not quite made it to horror. But to me, it's right there for all the reasons Nico listed.
I got you. I'm actually in agreement. So this is a pod
first.
Yeah, pod solidarity here. I definitely do think that I wouldn't necessarily call this an out and out horror movie. And if I had to name another movie that kind of made me feel the same way, I would have to say maybe Sleepy Hollow, starring Johnny Depp, or a lesser known cut, Little Red Riding Hood, or whatever the movie was called, came out in 2010, starring Amanda Seyfried.
Oh yeah,
kind of quasi horror, atmospheric, gothic in some respects. Not necessarily out and out. Ooh, it's more like when you have a Halloween party with your friends and no one's really scared. You just have like spooky vibes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
So speaking of definitely, there were definitely some feminist themes running through this film. I'm going to go ahead and read you guys 2 quotes. So first, the king is afraid because the queen can do whatever she wants. Women often know things they aren't supposed to. And in reference to fear, he's afraid of me, as all men should be if you're smart. So these are the things that the witch tells Gretel. So I'm going to start with you, Dan. How much of a kind of feminist influence would you have said you saw in this movie?
I think it was definitely there. I think a lot of the underlying themes is about feminist ideas and powerful women, because of course the witch is very powerful, and at the end of the movie Gretel becomes a witch and comes into her power, and there's one point in the movie where she says, when she's learning about these witch powers, she asks the witch if will I be able to rule over everything or something like that, like basically have like ultimate power or something, and she kind of does almost. So I definitely think that those women empowerment themes are there. Absolutely.
All right, Nico, you see anything else?
It's definitely a reversal on the traditional like male protagonist saving the damsel in distress, which I can appreciate. I like it. I didn't think it was forced at all. I mean, like I said, I think Sophia Lillis is a great actor, and I think she played her part well. I think the only way that I would see this being a distinctly not feminist take is, and this relates back to, I believe, the original tale, this happens as well. Gretel and Hansel's mother is not very supportive at all and kind of drives them out and just says like, look, y'all gotta go get some fucking food or a job, or I'm going to cut you to pieces. And that's not very cash money of her. Definitely not.
From my perspective, I would probably say I agree with you in so much as I wouldn't really consider it to be forced. I definitely think it was very present throughout the movie. Definitely, themes of, it's funny that you said it's a reversal of the guy saving the girl, because in the original fairy tale, she saves him. Gretel saves Hansel.
Which is, that's fair.
They did find that. You should also read The Snow Queen for another great story like that. But no, they definitely did that. But also, it was cool where we have the theme of rejection of children, which is a massive theme in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
The witch, to get her kind of ultimate witch powers, she had to eat her kids. So that was dope. And then we also see that, there was like a little girl who was evil. So they ended up, basically like sending her out into the woods.
I wish they gave her a name. That's probably my biggest criticism of the movie. She didn't have a name. The girl in the pink hat was just the girl in the pink hat. She could have been called Stacy for all we know.
Well, we do find out later on that was the witch's daughter. Did she ever call her name?
Nope, just my kid.
Huh. Wild. Yeah, and I did also think at the very start of the movie, it was interesting because I found myself considering what they were actually trying to do. Because on the surface level, it does seem like, like we discussed those other themes, but there was maybe not going so much to one side where clearly, back in like the whatever hundreds this movie is supposed to take place, they got a plague running through.
Hundreds.
Yeah, it's like, they got like the patriarchy and whatnot. or at least one rich old dude who was way too into whether or not she was a virgin or not.
That dude was 100% a rapist.
Oh yeah.
There was that piece to it. And then there was also even when they were going to go to the supposed safe place, to the woodsman, you know, he was telling the ranger was telling Hansel, hey, you're going to cut down wood and you're going to be a ranger and you're going to be a badass. And then he was telling her, yeah, you'll learn the herbs and the ways of the earth. Ironic is something she didn't want to do, but then she ended up learning the herbs and the ways of the earth anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about that scene for a second? Like, there was a part that I think was a huge plot hole in that movie. And I feel like this is where potentially director Oz Perkins had some ideas that he just wanted to throw in there. In the beginning of the movie, when Gretel and Hansel leave out to go, you know, in search of job, employment, and food, they're, you know, wandering through the woods. They find this ranger, this dude who saves, I believe it's Hansel's life from a zombie-looking dude.
Yeah, it's like a random Demon X.
We never see that again. And that was really disappointing. Like, it was really funny. I put it in my notes when the dude just straight up does a fucking headshot through the guy's head. Like, literally wrote in all caps, headshot. And I followed that up with, oh, nice diversity, because, you know, he's black. But I just, it was either a missed opportunity or it was just a misused scene, I think.
I feel like there were a couple parts like that. Well, two main parts. One was that one. And then the second was when the witch gives her backstory and explains that she ate her children and things like that. That part felt really weird to me too, because I feel like if they had not told me that, the story would have been just as effective. Like,
it would have been the same story.
I didn't see the point of that. Like, that didn't change anything. That didn't adjust my thinking or anything at all. So I was kind of like, that was a really strange 5 minutes. Like, why?
It was legit just like a Yelp review. Like, eat your children. I did it. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. And I was just like, I don't know. Like, those two parts kind of felt a little weird to me.
So I definitely applauded the role of the ranger there, who I believe, man, I'm going to really hate myself if I'm wrong here. I believe that was played by Ian Kenny, the guy who played the ranger. I thought that was awesome that they gave him that role. I wish it had been more. But
that was Charles Babalola.
Was it? Then who the fuck is Ian Kenny?
You got me, man.
Shit, I apologize. All right. So there was that piece to it. And I agree with you. It did seem like maybe there was supposed to be like more going down that direction with that theme. But I don't know. I guess we didn't get it. But speaking of didn't get it, we also did not get a really dark ending. And that's potentially where the movie it had the opportunity to go down that road. So there's a scene where the witch kind of offers Gretel the opportunity to eat her brother and gain dominion, you know, and the witch was nice. We could say she was not really antagonistic towards Gretel. Would
Completely
we agree
agreed.
on that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah. She was like there as like a mentor and trying to help guide her and teach her kind of the ways. And then we have a scene here. Now we know, and it's funny that you mentioned that, the scene where the ranger saves Hansel's life, because Gretel books the fuck out of the house and doesn't even look back for Hansel.
I was dying in the theater.
Yeah, until like, well, you were alone. But until
true enough.
We get she turns around after she's safe and she's like, oh shit, Hansel. And then the ranger and then like the ranger saves him. But I did think it was pretty interesting that she like had no regard for her brother. And, you know, in the movie, she just doesn't want to eat him. She's like, yeah, let him go. But in this world, as unforgiving as it's shown to be, letting a 8-year-old boy go is essentially the same as killing him in many ways. But we didn't get that ending where she kind of takes on her full power to become like, you know, a witchy witch. Did either of you guys think was that something you guys wanted?
She didn't like eat her brother to bring on that full witchiness, but she's definitely becoming a witch.
Correct.
But a more positive witch. Peace, love, and positivity.
She's all about positive vibes, bro.
Right.
She attends hot yoga classes.
I don't know. I think I would have rather had a slightly darker ending. I think that may have tied the movie together. The sort of nice positive ending threw me off a little bit. But you know what it did remind me of quite a bit?
I think I know what you're about to say.
What's that?
the witch.
Yup.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the end was very, very similar, just not as dark, but like same kind of thing
Similar
happened.
but opposite, you mean?
Well, I mean, at the end, the girl she decides to become a full-on witch. It's just the witch movie does it much darker than this one does, but you know, end of the movie is kind of the same, I would say.
Yeah.
True. Just to see it, I kind of would have wanted to see what would have happened if she had at the end decided to kill Hansel. You know, we got something pretty similar because at the end of the movie, she sends Hansel back home to their mother who is now dead. And his future is very uncertain.
Yeah.
He is just picking up an axe. And I don't know. That was another one of the kind of dropped ideas. I was like, okay, so was that supposed to be a mercy, sending him back to his plague-ridden village? I don't.
I didn't think about that.
To be by himself. Like, she essentially killed him off. That they left because they couldn't survive there.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I don't know about that. Now let's go ahead and do what we always do. If you could insert yourself into the movie as either Hansel or Gretel, what would you do?
I'd eat the kid.
Would you?
Oh, straight up. I fucking hated that kid. There were so many moments in that movie where it was unintentionally comedic. For example, there is a part about 2/3 of the way through the movie when Gretel and Hansel are pretty settled into the witch's humble little abode, and Hansel is, playing with an axe, and he's out in the woods just like hitting trees and shit. And that's because they're in the middle of nowhere. That's like all you hear for probably, I would say, a good kilometer or so, maybe less, but it's loud as hell. And then there's another scene where immediately after, Gretel tells him, like, stop it, you could be attracting, some cultists or something like we saw earlier in the movie. And he's like, how did you know? Kid, you are loud as shit and annoying as hell. That's how she knew.
Yeah,
Sure.
he was a punk the whole time.
Dan, anything different you'd do as either Hansel or Gretel?
I would have stayed my ass at the fucking Ranger's house.
Yo, straight up.
Like, you're telling me that I leave my plague-ridden village and I go somewhere and a zombie attacks me? Fuck that. I'm staying at your house, bro. Like, you got bows, you got axes, you got all this shit. Like, I'm
Wait, was that his house or
place.
did he just pass by?
I
No, that was
assumed
his
it was
house.
his house.
And I made a note of that because, take notes while we're watching the movie. And one of the notes that I took was, I guess we're just going to, enter this hovel. Fuck knocking, I guess.
Yeah, right. And,
True.
and how was that zombie even there? Like, I don't even get that.
That's why I felt like a drop plot point.
Yeah.
Was that what the plague did, maybe?
Oh,
The fact
They
that
got
we're
a
asking
zombie
these,
plague.
the fact that
Could
we're
be.
asking these questions is not a good thing.
But I would have stayed there, and he was even like, yeah, you guys could go to this village, and like you mentioned earlier, Justin, like, oh, you can learn all these herb things and do all this and that. And I would have been like, yep, that sounds like good life to me.
Sold.
So,
And he was saying it's only like a 2-day trek, so just like keep walking.
Right.
pretty much. Well, that was the thing, yo. They
were
like
so close.
starved in like a day. I was like, holy shit, come on, like tighten your belt. You got this. But I probably would have, well, first off, if I could have chosen to be a character, if I could be Hansel, I would have told Gretel, like straight up, like, Gretel, you're a witch, aren't you? And then like, that's what I would have said, like straight up, like, yo, don't eat me. though.
You're a
Like,
wizard,
I'm real.
Harry.
Pretty much. Or if I was Hansel, you know what I really would have done? I would have just left. Yo, my sister's really becoming a witch though. I'm gonna
Straight
go
up,
to
they
the-
could have left at any time, though.
I'm gonna go to the hunt to the the woodsmen who are literally like half a day's journey away from here. I don't know. Maybe I'll round up a posse and come back, and we'll eat all the food. I don't know.
I think if I was Hansel, I would have like revolted against my sister, because even though I thought he was a punk the whole movie, she was really mean to him the whole movie.
Yeah, she was.
Which I
like,
loved.
She was really dismissive, which again, like, I didn't like him very much. But at the same time, if I was him, I would have been like, eventually I've been like, yo, shut the fuck up. Don't talk shit. You talk shit, get hit. Come on.
Be like, yo, I'm carrying around this axe.
Yeah, I got a fucking axe.
What's really good?
I chopped down a tree earlier. You want to go? Like, come on.
Yo, I will say I was so hyped for him when he chopped down that mini sapling.
That
I
was
was-
pretty neat.
Yeah. So, and speaking of, any favorite scenes? Any scenes that jump out to you guys?
My favorite was actually when Gretel sneaks and kind of follows the witch. Well, no, she doesn't follow the witch. She opens that like door behind the like secret wall thing, the secret door behind the wall, and she finds her brother there. And then the witch, the young version of the witch, and the witch makes all the body parts into food. I thought that was a really cool scene, like visually, and also just kind of like what's happening and everything. That was my favorite part.
Nico?
I really enjoyed the dream sequences, honestly. I thought the audio was really well done. I relished in the opportunity to write, actually, don't open that door in my notes when she was going into the basement and, you know, looking at the morgue that was down there with all the dead bodies that were whispering to her. I just thought that was really nicely done, and sort of like emblematic of the movie as a whole. It had the nice camera work with the vignettes sort of like blurring her vision, showing that it wasn't real. It had more of the horror elements up front and close and personal, and it established a lot of the lore. So I really liked those scenes.
Okay. I definitely thought that perhaps one of my favorite scenes was there was the shot where, you know, she's like chained down and then her brother's over the fire and they're in the kind of like the white room where, you know, it's the previously mentioned eatery. And
Eatery and yeetery.
I thought it was pretty cool. I like the scene. And I think this movie can take plaudits for its visual direction. I definitely enjoyed it. And you know what? Sorry, and not to get off topic, but another kind of scene that didn't really make any sense to me. So there's a random point in time where, so first off, at the very end of the movie, we see the spirit of children that the witch has kind of eaten. I assume.
Yeah.
Or done something bad to. Now, there's a scene in the movie where Gretel, I can only assume, gets her period and then goes to wash the blood off in a river. And then she sees like evidence of the kids, like dolls or something. Like, did I hallucinate that or did that actually happen?
That actually happened.
That happened.
Yeah, that seems so random. Like, I was like, wait, what? Like, I guess, okay, you're hinting at us that there's like some kids. But like, I don't know, man. That was so, and like it never mattered again, except for the very end.
Maybe the kids were the food.
That's what I thought, but that actually wouldn't have made sense because it seemed like a fresh batch.
It did. So context for what Justin is saying. And this is another one of my favorite scenes where Gretel and Hansel are in the basement and they're both terrified of the younger witch, and she's materializing out of this pool of tar in the floor and starts pouring out, you know, tubs of viscera, blood, organs, and offal and stuff. It's really a neat scene, and her eyes open up, the witch's eyes open up, and they're just milky white. And I thought that was a really cool scene, but I thought it was implied that those were the children. I could be wrong, though, because those did look... I mean, I don't know. I've never seen a fucking dead body. I could be full of shit.
I thought it was implied that it was the children as well.
All right, maybe my implication was wrong.
Or maybe not like the original children from ye old days, but a fresh batch of children or something.
I noticed that witch killed a bunch. She did not discriminate. There was a multicultural cast of children that witch had killed. I didn't know if to be proud or disgusted. So take that as you will. So next up is going to be the critic rating. Drum roll. All right, guys. So this movie got a 61% from the critics on Rotten Tomato. It's at a 61% rating. And the audience score is posted at 22.
Oof.
Now, we already kind of said, you know, if we liked it or not. So let me see. We're going to go around, just yes or no. Do you agree with the critics? Dan, yes or no?
Yes.
Nico?
Yeah, mostly. Yeah.
I say no. Do you agree with the audience, Dan?
No.
Nico?
Nah.
I do. Now, real quick, let's just go ahead and give our brief kind of thoughts, you know, closing thoughts on the movie and what you would see this movie at on Rotten Tomatoes. Starting with you, Dan.
So I agree with the critic score. I think it was a pretty good movie. There were a lot of parts, like we kind of discussed, like plot-wise, that didn't totally make sense. But I thought it was really visually interesting. And like we kind of mentioned, you know, the music was really cool. And I would like to see more movies similar to that and that kind of
definitely
feel and everything. So whereas I think it falls short of what it was trying to do, and short of being a great movie, I was really interested, and it kept me guessing the whole time. And I kind of left the theater and I was like, man, that was a cool experience. Not a great movie necessarily, but it was just a cool experience to me. So that's why I would give it that like 60-ish rating. I think that the audience score was a little too harsh for me. I was entertained, so I don't think it warrants like a 20-something%. But yeah, that's my thoughts.
Nico?
I agree 100% with what Dan says. And something that I don't know if aggregators like Rotten Tomatoes take into account is, whether or not, the enjoyment factor versus the like film factor. Like as a film, as an experience or an atmosphere piece, I really liked it. And like Dan was saying, the sound design, the art design, really enjoyed it. It was really unique, and I would love to see more stuff like this. If they really hit the nail on the head with, like, if they did this just like 20% better, I think it would be a great film. But as it stands right now, I think a low 60, high 50s is a good enough rating for it.
Yeah.
I did not like this movie at all. I said basically within, I think, 20 minutes, I kind of was like, this isn't gonna be too great. And
what turned you off?
Pretty much. I think it was just more so the direction that I saw the movie going in. I wasn't necessarily, it's funny. I think the best piece of acting came from the little kid, because I thought that, he, for his age, that being his film debut, I thought he did really well. However, everything else was passable. The story, yes, we all knew the fairy tale, but I found the plot to be rather predictable. I don't know. The one massive piece that I do have to give the movie credit for is its visual direction. Like I said before, I thought the visual direction was awesome, and I hope that they can make another movie with this kind of art style in mind. Because I do think if they had kind of, maybe, I don't know if it was a budgetary constraint or I don't know, but if they had focused more on the kind of ethereal, dope, atmospheric moments that they generated sometimes, I would have said, that would have been better. And to your point, Nico, I think if they had done 20% better, I think that would have made the movie more than 20% better, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah, no, I get you.
Agreed.
So as far as I can see, for me right now, there was nothing in this movie, though, that would really attract me. And I will have to say this, I would not recommend this to anyone who asked me if they thought this was a movie I would recommend. I couldn't do it. Dan, Nico, your thoughts?
I would watch it on Netflix.
Okay, you got to watch for free. Nico?
Yeah.
I would recommend this to someone who's not into horror movies.
Okay. But you think it is like, what? Is that something you would pay the bucks to rent? Is this a wait for Netflix deal?
Definitely a wait for Netflix deal.
Okay.
And to clarify, I definitely think people should watch it.
Same.
But on Netflix.
There you go. Classic Netflix and chill movie. So, do we have any final thoughts before we go ahead and close this one out? Anything you guys need to get off your chest?
Again, I kind of want to see more movies of this style, this atmosphere and everything. And I hope that it sort of inspires that a little bit. And, one or two movies here or there kind of take it and run with it and do, a better job. But yeah, I hope we see a little bit more of that.
Okay, interesting. I will say that from my perspective, this is obviously a horror podcast, but I don't want to be constrained by the definition of horror being so narrow. I know I oftentimes argue
coming from you. That's interesting.
Of it being narrow, but I like the idea of, at least looking at these kind of movies and then debating the merits of whether or not they could be considered horror, because whether something is horror or horror adjacent, it's only a matter of whether you open that door. And Nico, any thoughts from you?
Is that imply like it's only a matter if you open that door? So like, don't
you
just don't do it. No, but my last thoughts are the younger witch was hot as fuck. I just wanted to throw my lizard brain heterosexual mind into there. But no, it's like I said, I would recommend this to someone who's either trying to get into horror movies or just isn't really can't really handle scares, because it wasn't scary. I didn't think at all. No. It's more of a mood piece than anything, and like as a mood piece, it succeeds. As a horror movie, it fails, I would say.
So this movie doesn't get that illustrious "don't open that door" stamp of approval then?
I don't think so.
Nah.
I think the potential of this movie would, but it didn't live up.
It had so much potential.
All right, folks. Well, them's the breaks from us here. That's goodbye from Justin, Nico, and Dan. And remember, wish you all safe dreams, and please don't open that door. Have a great night, everyone.